Coming up on today's show, we're going to be showing you how to set up a secure SSL-only web server. There's also going to be an interview with Eric Le Blan about community participation and FreeBSD's role in the commercial server space. So stay tuned for all that and more here on BSD Now, the place to be, SD. BSD Now, episode 51, Engineering Nginx, recorded August 20th, 2014. Hey, I'm your host, Chris Moore.
And I'm Alan Jude.
Hey, we're glad to have you guys with us this week. Got another exciting show coming at you. We'll have an interview a little later on, but before we do any of that, of course, let's get into this week's top headlines. So first up, we have a neat article from our friend Peter Hanstein, who I enjoy talking to at conferences, but he's always out there causing trouble, it seems like, or reporting on it anyway. In this case, he's taking aim at password gropers, taking the spam trap bait.
Well, yeah, specifically, as TJ wrote in our show notes, is apparently Peter always has his eyes glued to his log files and reads every line.
Yes.
But basically, he a while ago started a spam trap where he just put up email addresses, fake ones, at his domain, so that and then when spammers would try to send email to that, he would capture their information and add it to the spam database as quite a useful thing. And then later on, he noticed that bots were attacking his POP3 server and attempting to brute force the passwords of the email accounts. And so, he set up stuff to block that or whatever. And then one day he noticed a correlation that they were trying the email addresses out of his spam trap.
Yes.
So they weren't even looking for email addresses they knew were real. They were just trying anything, basically.
Yeah. At this point, we'll try anything. We're desperate.
Yeah. But I guess that mostly comes from the fact that, running the brute force attack against your POP3 server doesn't really cost them anything. They're using stolen resources. And so there's, not much incentive for them to do it very well. And I guess it kind of fits with the thing we talked about on my other podcast the other week was, why do spam and phishing emails always so poorly written? Surely, if they were better written, they would get more results. But they took a look at they did a little study on it, and they found that while poorly written emails like that are only going to get 1 in 1,000 people to actually look at it, of those 1 in 1,000 people that actually fall for the badly written phishing email, 70% of those people are gullible enough to fall for the scam. Whereas if they wrote a much better email and they got 10 out of every 1,000 people to fall for it, but of those only 1% of them were gullible enough to fall for the scam, then in the end either way they get the same result of one compromised person out of every 1,000 or 100,000. And so because of that, it's just cheaper to just do it poorly because, the kind of places where they're going to brute force the POP3 server and get a result are the kind of places that, they're going to get either way.
Sure. Well, he, Peter definitely seems to have a sick sense of humor where he just really enjoys watching this, inane attempts to get into his POP and taking a look at the logs. But he came up with a couple conclusions as to why he thinks this is happening. He said, first up, they could be trying to weed out bad entries, possibly.
Yep.
So maybe they're trying to weed out bad addresses.
Because, that was definitely a thing for a while, was a brute force where they would try to send an email, but they would never actually get to the point of sending the email. They would just start sending the email and wait till the point where the mail server would tell you that account doesn't exist here. And then they would just brute force through those until they found every account at the domain so they could spam them all. Now, people reconfigured their mail server to wait until after you had sent the message to check whether the account existed to prevent that. And so he was wondering if the same thing was happening with POP. But he looks at the law, and he actually, telnets into the POP3 port and speaks the protocol, because that's how you do it. And notice that when you try to log in, it asks for the username and then separately asks for the password, and it doesn't tell you whether the account exists or not. So that kind of ruled that one out.
Sure. So the second one he went to was thinking perhaps that the list was all good and they just want brute force access. So he explored that as well. And then the third one he came up with is maybe this is just an elaborate joke being pulled on him.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's probably just a scraper that grabbed those, and then it, so I have all these email addresses for BSD lead or whatever, and so I'm going to go and smack on it. And, doesn't help that every one of the usernames doesn't actually exist. Although I saw a hilarious one on Twitter this week of some password groper that got the fields transposed and was putting the password as the username, and then the username was, so trying to log in with all the different passwords with the password root.
Script kiddie fail.
Yeah. It was interesting to actually see what passwords they were guessing.
That's really cool. Well, Peter did update his article, it looks like yesterday, where he said the attempts appear to have stopped on his host. So that's interesting. Maybe somebody caught wind of what he was doing, messing with him.
Cool.
Okay. Let's see here. We'll move on to the next article then. Yep. So inside the Atheros Wi-Fi chipset, Adrian Chad, who is a big name in the FreeBSD community, is known commonly as the wireless guy. He gave a talk at DEF CON Wireless Village 2014 recently, and we have a link to the YouTube video in the show notes.
So he
in case you want to watch
talks about how the Atheros chips actually works and what he learned while writing the driver and so on.
Why they're particularly so popular for open source development. And of course, anytime Adrian speaks, there's going to be a lot of good information, but he's got a lot of cool and possibly evil things you can do with wireless cards in this talk. So that's one reason to watch it right there. It's a very technical talk, though. So if you're not a driver developer, some of it's probably going to go over your head, but still no reason why you can't watch and try and learn.
Exactly. It's good stuff. For
he also... Definitely. We also got a raw video file link too on archive.org. So if you'd like to grab it that way and watch it offline, you can do so. And we also want to mention he's also recently been working on getting Kismet and aircrack-ng to work better with FreeBSD, including packet injection and some other fun stuff.
Nice.
So if those are the kind of keywords that make you excited, like, you need to go watch this video.
Yep.
So good deal. Okay. Let's see. You want to do the next one here, Alan, about the trip reports?
So we got a whole bunch of trip reports that finally came in. We have Mark Linneman and Baptiste Toussaint about from BSD CAN. They finally sent their trip reports in August. But they talk about what they saw while they were there and what happened. And so you can find all that. Mark has mostly been working on ports-based stuff as well, and I think he was for a while was the maintainer of Tinderbox and some of the older ports tools, and or Portsmon, which is the one that bugs the port maintainers to tell them that, hey, there's a newer version of the app that you're responsible for, so go update your port, which is an important thing. I maintain a couple of ports, and I don't always notice when there's a new release. And
you don't always watch the upstream feeds,
and
a lot of them are just like an entry on a website down near the bottom, like, oh, new version is out.
Right, and so that finds those and pokes people about them, and so they're working on updating that and some other stuff. Because originally it was written based on the CVS repository for ports, but then they switched to SVN, and so it needed a bunch of updates and so on. So he talks about that and working with Brian Drury and so on. And then in Baptiste's trip report, he talks about all the stuff he was involved in, which obviously was almost everything, especially being the main guy on PKG. Was all over the changes he wants to do to the ports tree and other things he wants to do. And he also had shout outs to Brian Drury and Matt Seaman and a bunch of other people. Works with them a lot, but it was nice to actually sit with them in person for a while and get a lot more stuff done. And then also he got to talk to a bunch of people from the cluster admin team, which are responsible for providing the resources that all the package system uses to compile all the ports and distribute them across the global mirrors.
Let's see, who's up next? We have Anton from the OpenBSD project, who wrote about some of his work on GNOME, RC, and Etsy cleanup. So that's, if you're running a desktop on OpenBSD, you may want to take a look at that, see what's happening there. And then Peter Hessler also wrote something, a latecomer to the hackathon. He detailed some of his experience, too, on hacking the installer and built-in upgrade functionality. That's cool.
So it's a little easier to upgrade your OpenBSD. And then lastly, they had Christian Weisberger, who wrote in about his work on improving the OpenBSD ports infrastructure.
Nice. Okay, so definitely some interesting trip reports about some upcoming work happening in Free and OpenBSD. You'll want to take a look at that. But speaking of another BSD, though, we got some Dragonfly BSD news. Next up, that 3.8.2 has been released. So now that it's already been branched, but the release media is now available for 3.8.2. So this is pretty much a minor update, mostly to fix the recent OpenSSL vulnerabilities, which is still an important enough reason to upgrade. So you'll definitely want to do that if you can. It also includes some various other small fixes.
Yeah, it looks like they pulled in the service command as the wrapper around the etcrc.d stuff, which also sanitizes the environment and does some useful things, but mostly just it's less typing, and it's kind of compatible with what end users expect. They come from Red Hat or whatever, and it just makes sense. Some changes to the they fixed the transmit rate control on one of the USB Ethernet adapters.
RUM looks like. Also, it looks like they, I'm not even sure what that one is, but USB 4 BSD brought in some pause function with lock and serializer. What's the other one? Set CR4 OSFX before probing the MXCSR mask. Okay.
Yay for hardware.
I'm not sure what that means. Yes.
But Matthew Dillon did a bunch of work on his sleep sync before initrd, fixing problems with NFS, turning off auto socket sizing, error handling for NFS when it's in asynchronous mode, some fixes to the installer, and some improvements to the boot code as well.
Very cool. Looks like Mark Newman did some stuff in the RX MAC address and ACL stop MAC. Previously, that he said there was a logic error there. Which
that's one of the Atheros gigabit Ethernet adapters is ALC.
Nice. Okay, and it looks like he fixed some other logic errors due to TXQ status. And then Sasha did some kernel PCI fix. Looks like wrong checks for U4B presence, fixed some Cyvazev bugs.
All that stuff. And
including he did the OpenSSL stuff
importing the newest OpenSSL, or 101i.
101i. Okay, nice. Well, very cool. So again, if you're running an older Dragonfly BSD, it is now time to upgrade. So make that happen now. Okay, and that actually is the wrap-up for the weekly news, the top headlines. But before we go back to our next segment, we do want to mention a sponsor for this week's episode, which is, of course, Tarsnap. And before we get into what Tarsnap is, just mention the URL, tarsnap.com/BSD Now. Go there, check it out, let them know we sent you. But what's Tarsnap do for us, Alan?
Yeah, so it's online remote backup so that your files are stored somewhere safe, so that, if your laptop gets stolen or, your house gets burned down or something, you still have all of your files. But the important thing is that it was designed for people that were serious about their data security or who were paranoid.
Yes, truly.
Yes. So it actually takes all the steps in the right order to make sure that your data is safe and it can't be exposed to other people because not only does the service not have access to it, but they couldn't give access to it to somebody else, right? You're the only person with the key that can decrypt your files. And you can trust that the crypto is happening the way you expect because the code for the client is there for you to look at and compile yourself, so you know that it's not just some binary someone might have modified or something. It's like, I'm going to... if you want, you can grab the code, compile it yourself, audit it and be like, okay, yes, I see it's using this bit of crypto and it's definitely doing it right, and because of that, it provides that much more security than any other service because none of the other backup clients are going to give you the source code for the client. And so that's
where the paranoid part really
it's the only way you can be sure that
verify. Trust me, verify.
It's the only way you can be sure that it's not encrypting your files to a second key as well that they can decrypt or something. Or, like Dropbox encrypts everything with their one key on their server side after they deduplicate it. And so, when they get a subpoena or something, they can just hand it over. With Tarsnap, all they could do is hand over. With Tarsnap, all they could do is hand over the encrypted data, which no one will be able to read. And you're the only person with the key, so it's all you have to do is not lose it if you want to get your data back, or lose it if you don't want anyone to get your data back.
Sure. And of course, we've mentioned this before, but the clients are available for more than just BSD. Yes. So even if you're on Linux, OS X, Minix, OpenIndiana, Cygwin, and many other Unix-like operating systems, you can grab a TarSnap client that will work for you.
Even if you're running Windows, you can use Cygwin to run it on Windows, although, all you have is a command line interface. So if you're okay with that, then that's great.
Sure.
And it's only $25 per gigabyte per month.
Definitely. Very cheap. Wait, 25 pico dollars? Did you say
dollars?
No, it's
250 pico dollars per byte month, which works out to 25 cents per gigabyte per month.
I gotcha. So again, very cheap.
Yeah,
so if you're backing up a small amount of data, $5 may last you a long time.
Yeah, it's measured in pico dollars because it's accurate down to the individual byte. And Colin's a math nerd, so of course, all the units and stuff. Right. There's no rounding errors.
Well, very cool. Well, again, check it out. It's at tarsnap.com/BSD Now. Go ahead and get signed up. Let them know that we sent you, and you need to be doing your backups online anyway. You might as well make them secure and safe.
Yep. And, audit the client code. There's a bug bounty if you find something wrong.
Yeah, good deal. So that's a good challenge if you want to see if you can find something wrong. I don't think there's been anything in recent history, but darn,
there's a wall of fame here somewhere.
Yes. Cool. Okay, we'll be back in just a moment.
This week we're joined by Eric Le Blan, the chairman and CEO of Nginx. Thank you for joining us.
It's a great pleasure to be here.
Yes. I guess the first question we always ask people is how they first got involved with BSD.
Long, very, very long road. Let me, by the way of opening, introduce what is Nginx.
Yes.
Probably most people know Nginx better by the name of SCO. SCO has been the business of developing, manufacturing, and selling operating system for over 30 years. We are on the System 5 tree. We have two major products called OpenServer and Unixware. One of the fundamental differences between FreeBSD and our operating system is that we are proprietary. Mm-hmm. And by popular demand, more and more of our clients, who includes most of the Fortune 500 people, have been saying we should be looking at open source for various reasons, security, auditing, and so on and so forth. And about 2 years ago, we decided to look at adding a new operating system that we could support to our list of products and services. And after 18 months of research, we ended up with FreeBSD. Now you're going to ask, I'm sure, why FreeBSD?
Yes. What of the many great things about BSD attracted you to FreeBSD?
Primarily the fact that it's a very close tree. Generally, the FreeBSD, the Berkeley, is a very close tree to Open5. So a lot that we can contribute to FreeBSD. We can migrate our tools and so on and so forth without difficulty. But also from the user base, what we found is that a lot of people were actually using FreeBSD in installations on the side of OpenServer, our Unixware, our products. A lot more, by the way, than any other branch of BSD, such as OpenBSD, NetBSD, Zorin, and so on and so forth. Evidently, a lot of people also use Linux. But we are, and let me make the point here, we are pure developer of operating systems. And we're not going to comment on Linux as a pure operating system, but it's absolutely certain that FreeBSD is. And therefore, after 18 months, we decided to join your community. And it's been a very pleasant experience to date.
Mm-hmm. I guess was one of the other things that helps is the FreeBSD Foundation, having that single entity that you can interface with the community through?
Not only that, but also the license. Mm-hmm. This is actually absolutely key for us because we have a lot of resellers. We have a community called IXorg, who are resellers, and they want to be able to develop proprietary environment and so on and so forth. So for us, the license is important, but also the fact that the FreeBSD Foundation organization is a very close-knit group of people. Mm-hmm. Small is beautiful for us because it allows people to be able to develop, to synchronize with each other, to do proper testing, and so on and so forth. And for us, testing, as we have customers who ask for support for up to 15 years, whether it's in OpenServer or a new FreeBSD. For us, that's testing, scrutinizing, code review. That's really a major part of our life. Mm-hmm. And therefore, we wanted to make sure that we associate ourselves with a community who has the same mindset. And I'm very pleased to say that's what we found.
Yeah. And I guess the other thing is probably FreeBSD is a little easier to get code upstreamed into.
Code upstream is important, yes, but it's not the only reason. I mean, we really pay a lot of attention to the environment as well as the upstream.
Yeah. Was there anything else you wanted to mention?
Well, I think that there is a fundamental question that we need to ask ourselves. As we said, we have been in the business for 30 years, and we intend to be in the business for a very long time. It is certain that operating systems are going to change drastically over the years, and that's another reason why FreeBSD is very interesting, because you're not quite bleeding edge, and hopefully we will help you in this matter. But you're very close to state of the art. You're looking at quite a lot of new out-of-the-box ideas, and this is really what we like, and that's what you need nowadays if you're a developer of operating system, innovation and creation. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly why we joined you.
And you mentioned supporting your version of FreeBSD for 15 years. Is that based on taking one release and just applying the fixes to it?
Let me actually explain the cycle of what we mean by our version. Mm-hmm. We want to commit to the community, mm-hmm. but we eventually have to create some tools and so on and so forth. What our customers and clients require is to take a standard open source version, such as FreeBSD 8, FreeBSD 9, or FreeBSD 10, and support that for 15 years. When you think that the FreeBSD cycle is about 2 years, that means that for the 13 years afterwards, we have to support it, provide the backports of the open source repository, and so on and so forth. So it's not a small undertaking. We don't with FreeBSD, we don't go on to create our own products.
Right.
We want to very quickly be able to commit to the FreeBSD Foundation, if they will let us so that it goes mainstream. Open source for us is absolutely key. It's not only key for us, but it's also key for our clients and customers.
Right, so would you be taking like FreeBSD, when you say FreeBSD 10, do you mean like 10.0 or 10.1 and supporting that, or is it the whole stable branch where...
The whole stable branch.
Yeah.
The whole stable branch.
So you will, how do you manage your clients wanting something stable and the fact that our stable branch includes new features? Do you keep the new features or do you try to cut them out? Or
no, what happens actually is that our cycle is different. Most of our users are very much against upgrade.
Yes.
Cycle of our users, if you run a power station, is between 5 and 9 years. We have clients who have actually cycles of 15 years. In other words, they will take a stable version, they will want to use it for the next 15 years and change, except for the security updates. And that's a tricky part. But eventually, when we get a new customer, a new client, they prefer to be on, not always, but they prefer to be on the latest stable version. So we have to support 10, 10.1, 11, and so on and so forth.
Right, so when someone buys the product and the support, they'll start with the latest version.
Yeah,
but they want to stay on that version. So not only do you have to support 10.0, but also 10.1.
Correct. We have to support 10.0, we have to support 10.1, and we also have to support the clients and customers who wants to go from 10.0 to 10.1 and to 11.
Okay.
So we cover the entire spectrum. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun.
I can imagine.
But that's a business.
Yeah, and you also mentioned digging in features, so it sounds like you are already planning on using ZFS and Beehive and some of the other stuff.
ZFSD to be precise. Beehive, yes, very strong components, because what we are trying to do, and we know that we can achieve it, is our OpenServer and Nginx customers today also wants to move forward. And one of the way is actually, but they have applications which are legacy applications. They may not have a source code, so they can't recompile. So one of the elegant way is actually to put OpenServer and Unixware inside Beehive. And that's a very, very exciting project. And it does work. Yeah. We already got 2 out of our 3 products working against Beehive. And that's another reason why you find FreeBSD to be a very attractive product. Things like Beehive.
Mm-hmm. Are there any other of the
products you'd like? A long list, but I would say a very strong development environment. Yeah. Doesn't matter for the end user, but it matters to us because we can, you have different compilers and so on and so forth. So we're not restricted. We can think. So there's a rich feature list. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. The questions.
Okay, I can answer questions.
Do you have anything else to mention?
No. Thank you very much for listening to this.
What was the other one? Oh, what was it Zinnius was hoping to bring back to the community? You mentioned your unit testing
absolutely.
and more comprehensive testing.
And that's something which is very important. We are developers. We develop our proprietary systems. But we are, for FreeBSD, we're only going to be developers when no one else is doing it. So how do we expect to work with the community? We expect you to lead in terms of development because you are the creative people, you are the innovative people. We are sometimes a very boring company where we have to do a lot of code review, system test, and a number of conditions, which is as long as my arm, scrutiny, and so on and so forth. We have to do it anyway to provide the support. So this is where we can really interact with the development community at FreeBSD.
And that's where it really meshes, because in open source, those are the jobs nobody wants to do.
And we understand that, and we are extremely well organized to do it. I mean, we have been doing system testing. Nginx and before that is known for being an extremely reliable operating system, trusted for decades. Mm-hmm. We have had clients which goes back many, many years. And why do they trust us? Because it doesn't fail at the end of the day. And why does it not fail? Because it has been tested to death. Yeah. And that's what we do. Mm-hmm. And we are organized to do it. So we might as well contribute that to the FreeBSD community, as well as some advice. I mean, we are very strong on compilers. We can really work well with you, but again, I repeat, we certainly look forward the FreeBSD development community to lead. We can help, we can guide, we can do the system testing, we can exchange ideas, but we're not here to influence greatly or even, God forbid, to push you in one direction, because that would be contrary to the open source principles.
Right. You also had mentioned earlier something about a BSD alliance.
Yes, absolutely. And let me touch a word on this. One of the reasons we chose FreeBSD is because there is no penetration statistics. There's no market share statistics. We know that there's a lot of install base, but we don't know how many. We don't know where they are. And one of our jobs is actually to create a critical mass for BSD. We are vendors. We do it on a commercial basis. In order to penetrate the market very quickly, you have a number of ways, but one of the ways is actually to find the local partners in each of the countries and so on and so forth. And this we already do through the IXOR community for OpenServer and Unixware. So rather than developing our own sales team, which takes a lot of time and you've got to ramp up, it's much better to find local partners, put them in an alliance. And again, it's a little bit like open source. We can share we can share the sales, we can share the technical support, they can do the level 1 technical support, we can do level 2, level 3. And therefore, it's also extending this concept of sharing and community even towards the sales. Mm-hmm. And that allows us to have a rapid penetration, we hope, and therefore achieve a better recognition of the FreeBSD brand.
Yeah. We're looking very much forward to that.
So do we.
And, just being able to a lot of times BSD is used in a lot of critical things, but we never hear about it. And maybe with your clients, that'll change a little bit.
And indeed, that's one of the advantage we have. We have resellers and we have direct sales or direct support, but we do have feedback environment. I mean, we do ask our customers, our users, what they want to see next. We know who they are. We know what they do. They usually, some of them invite us to their strategy meetings because they're planning at 10 years. So we can bring all this feedback back to the FreeBSD Foundation so as to have a better understanding of actually who is using FreeBSD and for what, which is an interesting road because certainly Linux has made a lot of efforts to make itself known in terms of its implementation, market share, and so on and so forth. It seems that FreeBSD, for various reasons, has not done that so far. And that's maybe why FreeBSD is not so well known outside the IT and the specialist community.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed the interview. We're going to go right into our news roundup. But before we do that, of course, we want to mention the other sponsor this week, which is, again, IX Systems, which we've mentioned a lot of stuff about IX in the last weeks. And they try and send us some new information we can talk about every week. And it looks like this week we got a YouTube video.
Yep.
So you want to describe that one?
Yeah, so they have a YouTube video here of how to set up the FTP server using FreeNAS, and they show how easy it is to quickly get an FTP server up and running.
Sweet. And then in addition, we got a link here to an article from the Flash Memory Summit of 2014.
Yeah, Tweaktown has an interview where they interviewed Josh and Matt while they were at the Flash Summit, and they talk a bit about FreeNAS and stuff, but also about IX Systems' TrueNAS appliance and the new model they have coming out that is entirely Flash-based.
Nice.
Nice. Josh talks about using ZFS in a configuration where they were actually able to use dedupe effectively, and managed to get 10 to 1 or higher dedupe ratios on the virtual machines, and so be able to, take an 8 terabyte flash array, but actually be able to hold like 80 terabytes of data, which is,
it's pretty
especially
slick.
When you have a lot of VMs that are kind of similar, you're going to have a lot of blocks that are the same. And
there's a lot of duplicates, overlay there. It's all the same system files.
And because of that, they were able to get really high dedupe ratios and actually use dedupe effectively. And so that was really interesting because, dedupe's been around since about 2006, but it's, always posed a problem with, having the right amount of memory and actually getting
a little scary to turn on.
and actually getting good performance out of it. But, Josh has been working on that, and it'd be really interesting to see what that turns out as. And
they definitely want to hit that link after the show then and take a look at that video.
And they talk about the contrast between FreeNAS and TrueNAS and a bunch of cool stuff. Although the interviewer keeps calling Josh Justin, which confused a couple people at first. Like, who's Justin? There's no Justin.
Right? Somebody off camera. Well, they also mentioned about a new wizard system that they're putting in, which should, they say, tame the complicated but powerful storage-specific operating system.
Matt talks quite a bit about what's coming up in FreeNAS 9.3, which is also very interesting.
Nice. Okay, well, definitely want to check that out. Of course, IX Systems being the sponsor behind FreeNAS. We've mentioned some of the other stuff they do, though, and of course, I'll mention the URL, which is ixsystems.com/BSD Now. But IX Systems builds all kinds of things, everything from small FreeNAS minis to the crazy 80 terabyte systems. I mean, you name it. Or 80 cores, I guess, was the system we talked about.
There's an 80 core one. There's an 800 terabyte one. Whether you need a lot of processor, a lot of disk, a lot of RAM, a lot of 10 gigabit Ethernet ports.
24, 10 gig.
Or whatever it is that you need, they will build it for you. And, it all comes with their warranty, which is 3 years by default, but they actually offer an option to expand that to 5 years now. They have financing and everything that you would expect from one of the big hardware manufacturers, bigger OEMs, but they provide the service that you can only get from a place that really knows about open source.
Yes. Yeah, they're not just reading off a script here when you call them. These are guys who actually live, breathe, and know open source, whether it be BSD and all forms of open source. So,
yeah, it's
again, you'll definitely want to talk to somebody who knows what you're trying to do.
Yeah, basically the place is staffed entirely by like sysadmins and FreeBSD developers, and so
pretty much,
if they can't solve your problem, then you found quite the problem there.
Yes.
But they provide everything you need. The pre-purchase consulting to help you decide how you should actually construct the machine and let them customize something for you. Get fast delivery, but with their battle-tested QA process, where they'll run the machine for a couple days first and make sure all the components are working together and everything is happy before they ship it to you, so that you're guaranteed that when you get it, it's going to be able to just go into production and get to work right away.
Sure.
And, they have very meticulous quality standards. There's no cables flopping around when you get it. It looks pristine.
No, those are some tidy machines when you open them up. It's actually kind of pretty. It's a shame to put the case back on.
It's like, can I run it like this? I want to see it.
Yeah,
don't you make ones?
I want one of those all acrylic.
Yes, I want one of the ones with the window in it so I can watch all the components.
Yes.
Yeah, and they have the white glove post-purchase support. So once you have the machine in production, you'll be able to get the support you need to keep it in production and make it all work well. Because they're the experts at ZFS and HVAs and high-speed networking and all that stuff. And so, if you have a problem, they're definitely the people to ask.
Okay. Well, again, that URL, ixsystems.com/BSD Now. Let them know that we sent you, and get in touch with these guys. They will definitely hook you up with the hardware you need and the expertise you need to go along with it. Okay, well, let's get into our news roundup for the week. So first up, we have a Defend Your Network and Privacy, the FreeBSD version.
Yep.
So back in episode 39, we covered a blog post about creating an OpenBSD gateway, partially based on our router tutorial. So we've done a follow-up post, or we're linking to a follow-up post here by the same author about doing a similar thing with FreeBSD.
Yeah. So
he mentions...
this is creating a VPN gateway that allows you to basically... you configure this as your gateway on the network, and it means that all the other machines will go through the VPN without having to have any extra configuration to make them do that, right? Rather than have to, connect to the VPN on your phone and on your PlayStation or whatever. Yeah. Everything on your network will just go through the VPN because of this FreeBSD box.
Definitely a handy trick, like you said, especially if you have a lot of devices on your network. Or having to hand configure each one is just tedious, time-consuming, and error-prone.
Yes, or if you have your parents' device or your girlfriend's device, or other people's devices that you don't necessarily want to have to reconfigure all the time or teach people how to use a VPN, you can just have this device on your network and it'll do it all for you.
Cool. So he does mention some of the disadvantages and advantages between the two operating systems. So that gives you a good basis on to evaluate and decide which one will work for your needs better. But the rest is pretty much the same. We're going to be doing a lot of firewall, VPN, DHCP server, DNS, crypt, etc. But definitely want to check that out if you're interested in doing something like this on a FreeBSD platform. Yep. Cool. Okay, next up, Ted Nginx actually has posted something this week about don't encrypt all the things. A couple interesting blog posts we have from him about encryption. So he talks about how Google recently started ranking sites with HTTPS higher in their search results. And then he reflects a little on how sometimes the encryption does more harm than good. Yeah. After Heartbleed, the ones who might have been able to decrypt your emails went from just a 3-letter agency to any script kiddie. Ouch. Yep. So he also talks a little bit about some PGP weaknesses and a possible future replacement. And he has another similar post entitled In Defense of Opportunistic Encryption. Yep. So you'll want to take a look at that. Any thoughts you had on that?
He just talks about a couple of different things, including, HTTPS as a sign for serious business, and great quote here, hey, you got your not serious lolcats in my serious Dogecoins.
Nice. Yeah. Cool.
But it's definitely worth a read to look at. He also talks about the power attack, where, the one we're talking about reading what was on your screen based on the noise on the electrical circuit, and the acoustic attack, where, it's like having... a virus jump from machine to machine using like the speakers built into a laptop and things like that. But yeah, he talks about a bunch of different stuff.
Whenever I hear acoustic attack, I can't believe it. But yeah.
Well, yeah, actually, he says in the brackets here, the acoustic attack definitely triggered the inconceivable response from me.
Yes.
And that's Ted Nginx, and he's, pretty hard to convince that something is inconceivable.
Mm-hmm.
I also talked about, part of the problem with encryption and stuff is that, for example, Adobe lost control of their signing certificate at one point, not because the signing machine was directly compromised, but in the interest of making things easier than physically carrying CDs across the room to sign them, they built a system where a compromised build server could request arbitrary bad things get signed. And so they didn't lose their cert. It just caused, people could sign other things than what they were supposed to. And that was a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And then, he had his comments on somebody did a post of what's wrong with PGP and GPG. And he says, while those are terrible in many ways, a big part of the problem is the key management and trying to make that easy and without compromising the security.
Yes. Well, again, interesting article, especially if you're interested at all in anything relating to encryption and crypto.
Yeah.
You want to take a look at that.
It just reminds me of the article we featured a couple months back from Paul Henningkamp talking about, more encryption is not the answer. What we need to do is beat the politicians over the head.
Cool.
Yep.
Okay, well, we got some FreeBSD news up next. Looks like the new auto mounter, which I know we've mentioned in the past, has just landed in current. So it is current now. If you want to build and test it out, you can. This is also done with the help of the FreeBSD Foundation, and it adds a new AutoFS kernel option. Now, does it have to be compiled into the kernel, or can you KLD load it?
Alan, do you know? I'm pretty sure it's just a module. Actually, AutoFS is a command rather than a module. So, oh no, there is a module. Yes, it is listed here, AutoFS module. So yes, you can just KLD load that.
Okay, good deal. Well, you'll want to take a look at it. You can check out the SVN viewer online to read over the man pages if you're not on current and start making your future plans on how you would like to use this for fun, profit, and world domination.
I noticed my name's in the commit because I helped review the man page.
Oh, there you go. And we also have a link to the recent newsletter where you can read about it over at the FreeBSDFoundation.org site.
Yes, and I tried to convince Edward to come on and do an interview when we were in Cambridge, but he doesn't like public speaking.
Oh,
it's like, well, it'd just be me and you in a room. It'll be okay. We'll have to corner him somewhere else and make him.
It's just a friendly chat.
We'll have to corner him somewhere.
Be at Euro. Yeah, maybe we can both corner. Cool.
So I promise not to bring that bondage tape somebody gave me in Japan.
What?
Some fan of the show came up and gave me this roll of bondage tape. Remember we were talking about handcuffing PHK to do the interview last year? And we commented on that. And so one of the TextNet fans one of the BSD Now fans that came to Asia BSD Con brought this roll of bondage tape, and I was like, really?
Oh my god!
Luckily, we didn't have to use that on anybody that we interviewed in Japan.
Man, now you're gonna scare all the potential.
Well, I'm just saying, I'm not bringing that with me to the Euro, so cooperate, and I won't have to bring it next year.
Oh man, yeah. So
you've been warned.
Anywho, you've been warned. Yes. Going into OpenSSH, though, of course it's another week. We got to have some OpenSSH news. Mm-hmm. So we have OpenSSH 6.7. The call for testing is out, and it's been a little while since we've had the last release, but it looks like 6.7 is almost ready. So we need people to try that out, test it, beat it up, see what we can break.
So they have
our friend
they have portable
Damien Miller is the one who did this.
They have portable snapshots available, so you can get snapshots for your different OSs and try it out, and as well as having obviously the CVS version and all the good stuff. They have instructions on compiling it, and quite the change list here, including some potentially incompatible changes. The default set of ciphers and Macs has been altered to remove all the unsafe algorithms. In particular, CBC ciphers that use the ARC4 are disabled by default. And so if those are the only ones you have available on your older SSH that you're connecting as the client to the server, then you wouldn't be able to negotiate a compatible encryption cipher.
Sure. There's a lot of stuff here, including let's go through some of the major new features, but they did some major internal refactoring to begin to make part of OpenSSH usable as a library. So far, the wire parsing, key handling, and KRL code has been refactored. They said they don't consider the API stable yet, nor do they offer the library in a separable form. So just as an FYI. It looks like SSH and SSHD, they added support for Unix domain socket forwarding. So a remote TCP port may be forwarded to a local Unix domain socket and vice versa. Or both ends may end up being a Unix domain socket. That's cool. They did some work to SSH and SSH keygen. They added support for SSH FP DNS records for ED255 19 key types.
Right. So that's where you can publish the SSH fingerprint in your DNS and then sign that with DNSSEC. So that when you first connect to that box, instead of getting "Do you trust this key?" it uses DNS to actually check the key. The problem was that the newest key type there wasn't a SSH fingerprint for it yet, and so the client didn't know how to check for it, and the SSH keygen didn't generate the records for you. But now they do, and so that should get rid of some warnings and stuff, and just add to that security.
Cool. Also, for SFTP, they also added a feature for allowing the resumption of interrupted uploads.
What is this, like 1996 called? They want their feature back.
Right?
I always wonder why we didn't have that. I don't know why we didn't.
Hey, 2014, we can finally resume our uploads, and better late than never, I suppose. Okay, SSH, they said when rekeying, you can skip file DNS lookups of the host name if it's the same as the one sent during the initial key exchange.
The host key, yeah. So basically, when it's rekeying, which it does every so much data or so many minutes, instead of having to do that SSHFP DNS lookup, if the key is the same as last time, we don't check. If it's different, then we have to check and make sure it's also still a valid key. But if it isn't, then we can just avoid having to read the file or do an extra DNS lookup because we know it's the same key, so obviously it was already authorized.
Okay, SSHD, it says they allow explicit : and 127001 forward bind addresses when gateway ports is set to no, which allows clients to choose address families. That's cool. Let's see, we got an SSHD config option, permit user RC to control whether the local SSH RC script is executed, mirroring the no user RC authorized key option.
So that you can set that server wide. That's useful, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see, they added a %C escape sequence for local command and control path that expands to a unique identifier based on a hash of the tuple of localhost remote user hostname or port, helps avoid exceeding miserly path name limits for Unix domain sockets in multiplexing control paths.
Yeah,
wow, that was a long.
Yeah, when you're taking the local host name, the remote user, the host name, and the port and stuff, and you're putting those, you have username at host and all that. Yeah. You can get really long, and then if you're putting that in a long subdirectory, and all of a sudden now the name of the file has exceeded that 255 byte limit. So by using a hash, it means that they're always going to be a little bit shorter, and that way there's less of an issue there.
Let's see, for SSHD, they also made the too many authentication failures message include the user, source address, port, and protocol in a format similar to the authentication success and failure messages.
Yeah, so cool. That tools that are looking for those too many failed login attempt to block an IP with PF or one of those other methods will actually be able to parse the information, and actually it'll contain the useful information like the IP address that needs to be blocked and so on.
That's cool. For like deny hosts and fail to ban some of those guys. And just take advantage of it.
TCP wrappers was the thing I was thinking of. Anyway.
Okay. So it said they added unit and fuzz tests for refactored code. These are run automatically in the portable SSH via the make test target. So that's cool. I think we'll probably stop there because there's a whole other page of bug fixes.
Yep, I didn't see anything that looks... anything.
We can always hit in a future week when
I just,
the actual release hits.
I didn't see anything else that jumped right out at me.
Let's see, the one they support building its Libra SSL portable.
I saw that one.
That's interesting.
And OpenSSH now requires OpenSSL 098F or greater. Older versions is no longer supported, although we're currently on 098ZB, so F is still pretty old.
Okay. Well, cool. I think that will wrap up the OpenSSH information. So we'll be back with our next segment in just a moment then. Okay, we're back with our feedback and questions segment of the show. We'll get right into it this week. We got first up is David has a question about BSD Magazine. So he says, "Hi guys, I'm a beginner in the BSD world. I read bsdmag.org almost every month, but recently the site changed a lot and then they now propose trainings. I received an offer by mail for a 1-year subscription to access their workshops for $199. I was about to subscribe because the subject, of course, is very interesting to me, but the PayPal invoice is linked to Hankin9 Media SPZOO/Hankin9Media at software.com.pl. I checked and it's more or less linked to hankin9.org and software.com.pl. Is this serious or a scam? Do you know these guys? What's your opinion on that?"
That's company.
That's serious. They're Polish. Yeah, that's the company that.
So Hankin9 Media makes, I think, like 10 different magazines, and BSD Mag is just one of them. Interestingly, I also saw that they're advertising looking for someone to teach those workshops.
Oh, well, there you go. But no, that is legit. That's the company behind.
Yeah,
BSD
they
Mag,
make a whole bunch of other magazines
for a long time.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And yes, the SPZOO is just how you say incorporated in Polish.
Mm-hmm. So no worries there. That should be legit. And I think you've done articles for them too, right, Alan?
They asked me about it once, and I talked about it. Never went anywhere, and so I've not actually done one. But you've done a couple, haven't you?
I think I've done like 5 or 6 of them for them. I just haven't recently because of doing this show and so many other things now.
I know. So I did
not a lot of time for writing articles.
I did 2 articles for the FreeBSD journal, but it's time is a factor.
A little time consuming, but go ahead, and if you're interested in doing those tutorials or workshops, by all means, sign up. If you can learn something there, that's great. Okay, next up we have a FreeNAS follow-up from Lachlan. He said he heard the reply from Alan and Chris this morning. The end of it, we pretty much described everything he did. As reference, this was, I think, was it last week? We were talking about the BitTorrent sync client in his jail. And let's see, he said he didn't install BT Sync from source or make his own custom
So he was
jail.
using the
package.
The pre-built one, and that's where he's having the problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he says it still can't identify the destination folder, even though he's using the built-in package. He truncated some of the logs. Anything jump out at you, Alan?
Not really. He didn't actually show the directory that he's trying to use from a view inside the jail. So it's hard to say.
He showed the IDs both in and out of the jail.
Yeah, so he created the same user and stuff, but it's just...
That's good.
Yeah, I don't know what the problem is.
Yeah, especially since you're using the FreeNAS plugin, I really would post this to their forums.
Which he says he did, and I'm sure that they'll show him what he's missing. Because
hopefully.
Basically, all the stuff he's trying to do at the command line should be able to be done via the FreeNAS interface, and that way it does it the right way, and it'll just work.
Maybe they do some magic in the background to make that work.
Yeah. Or, I think it's just, they deal with all the paths and stuff instead of and creating the nullifs mounts and making sure they come back when you restart and stuff instead of doing it yourself.
Yep. So definitely post it there if you find out a way to do it, like they give you a workaround. Go ahead and ping us back. We'd love to at least mention that on a future show. Okay.
Oh well, here maybe the problem. He just says that the BitTorrent sync application, which is a web GUI on a different IP address. If there's 2 different jails for the BitTorrent, then you obviously have to mount the jail twice or the file twice. But that's okay. Anyway, moving on.
So next up from Francis, he asks a question about Wi-Fi. He said, our desktop building guide for FreeBSD is really helpful in extending the life of my old laptop. In the process of installing FreeBSD, something odd comes to mind. Is there such a tool yet for FreeBSD to configure wireless networking without the need to do sudo su login as root? He said he heard that PCBSD has got Network Manager to work, but unfortunately his laptop does not do 64-bit in order to test that. Any help given would be greatly appreciated. He said another odd thing is that etc.wpa-supplicant.conf does not seem to mask WPA passwords, so when adding a new wireless network, the old one usually be visible to whoever's behind me. Is that normal? Well, first question I'll answer is the PCBSD project. Yes, we have a GUI network manager we've written.
Is that available in the ports tree?
That's what I was going to say. It is. So even though you're not on 64-bit, there's no reason you couldn't grab the port and compile it yourself and have
a 32-bit version.
You'll have a 32-bit version ready to go. There's nothing specific to that tool that's going to require 64-bit support. But it'll be a front end to WPA supplicant and do all your if config stuff, scanning the network, and has a nice little tray app so you can just click and say, oh, hey, there's 5 networks close to me. I want that one.
Yes, that works very nicely.
Yes, it'll just do the magic to make sure that happens. So Yeah, I haven't. That was like one of the first tools we wrote, I think, Alan, because I remember doing WPA supplicant by hand because I had a laptop at the time.
Well, the biggest one there was always
that just sucked.
when the access point has a really long name and it's case sensitive, and you're like having to like copy and paste it from the output of ifconfig scan.
Well, and back when we first started writing it, there was always this weird mixture of, okay, is it WEP? Is it WPA? Well, is it this? And everyone had a slightly different config in WPA supplicant, and it always meant reading the man pages because I never did it enough to remember it.
Yeah, you got it working, memory, and then
then you left it alone. Yeah, until you showed up at some new network, and you're like, oh wait, how do you do that?
So again? It worked on the wireless at home fine forever, and then you get every time you go to a conference, which is like 2 or 3 or 4 times a year, and then you're like, I forget how to do this.
Yeah. So that was definitely why we wrote that tool. As far as masking WPA passwords and WPA supplicant, I don't recall off the top of my head if it
can't.
Does that?
Basically, you need the plain text of the password in order to connect to the network. And so all it could do is like obfuscation or something, and that would just make it harder to configure it yourself. So yeah, that's obviously an issue if somebody's staring over your shoulder, I suppose. But yeah.
Yeah, it is what it is.
There's not really a way. You need the plain text of the password in order to connect to the network. So there's not really a way around that.
Oh, I will mention, Francis, the version of it's under sysutils PCBSD-utils-qt4 is what sucks in the network manager. Cool. I'll mention that's probably about 6 months old at this point, though. We're going to update that port in about 2-3 weeks when our next quarterly update.
The old one will let you configure your wireless, and that's all you really want.
The old one will do it just fine. There's not been too many changes in that code, so the old one should still work. But if you really want the newest one, it will be out in a couple weeks.
Very nice.
Okay. Well, cool. Let's see. Next up, we have the long one from Frank.
It's actually 2 separate questions, so I'll answer the easy one first. So he's asking, he's read that you shouldn't mix ports and packages. That's less true now. The biggest problem in the past was that when you used the packages, they were compiled when the release was made, and so they could be 6-8 months old or something, and so they would just cause conflicting versions, right? All of a sudden, so you install the version of getText or whatever, one of the big dependencies that everything depends on from the package. And then later on, when you update your port tree and you go to install a newer version of something, the problem you end up with is that it depends on a newer version of getText. And so now it wants to replace your version of getText. But once you do that, everything you installed from the package doesn't match that library version anymore, and you get all kinds of headaches. Now it's less of an issue because the packages are built once a week, and so they're never that far off the ports tree. And it'll get even better since their plan is actually to include the version of the ports tree the packages were built with as a package. So you can have your ports tree be a package that you would update from the package repository, and then when you build ports, you'd be building from the same ports tree that the packages were built from, and it would get updated once a week or whatever. And that would solve quite a few problems and make it easy to stay in sync with what's in the package system.
Oh, that's cool.
Also I think in package 1.4, it'll solve the other problems. The other problem right now is if you build something from ports because you want to customize the compile options or whatever, when the port gets updated to newer version and they build a newer package of it, when you do package upgrade, it's going to overwrite your port version of the package with the one from the package system and undo your changes. So, if you custom compile Nginx to enable the video streaming option, and then package update grabs this, one revision newer version of it from the package system, it won't have that option. So you can use the package lock and package annotate to switch it to lock it to a specific repository to prevent it from happening. But in package 1.4, when that comes out, hopefully in a couple of months, the package system will keep track of that and say, hey, they compiled this from ports. So when you do package upgrade, it will update your ports tree and recompile that port with the same options that you compiled originally. So package upgrade will actually start replacing things like port master. So everything you installed from the packages, it'll get update package-wise. But when it's like, oh, you had to custom compile this one port, I'll recompile that for you. And it does it the same way so that it won't erase the old version unless the new one compiles properly first. So that will make the package tool even more awesome. Yeah,
really looking forward to that. That'll be a killer feature in 1.4.
And so the second part.
Okay, that was the first part. Yeah, that was the short one.
The second part of the project, he says he was recently hired by a company that is running 5,000 Linux KVM systems to do molecular biology, and so they migrated from having 700 one-use servers that were pixie booting to having 5,000 VMs spread across them instead. And he goes on to describe the setup. You can read the email; it's linked in the show notes if you want. But he talks about the problem they're having is that they have he says 70 FreeBSD ZFS servers that are the backend storage for that array, and they're all connected with like 10 gigabit fiber NICs and all that fun stuff. But they're having problems where sometimes when they create zvols, they'll lock up. And I'm not sure, he doesn't really describe the locking up or like what state they hang in, so it's hard to tell. But there's one thing that might be is when you're creating zvols, especially when they have a file system in them, sometimes the FreeBSD GOM layer tries to grab that device.
Sure.
So like I had a Linux beehive running on a zvol and it was working fine, but then when I modified it, the GOM layer grabbed it, and then inside the beehive it would because the GOM layer locked it. Beehive wasn't allowed to write to it anymore, and so it was throwing errors inside the VM. Luckily, the great people over at IX Systems ran into this problem, and so they had, I think it was Alexander, added a CCTL and a ZFS property called vol mode, which specifies how zvols should behave. So it's a CCTL that you have to set before you import the pool. So you put it in your /boot/loader.conf. And I think you can also specify it per data, per zvol, but I'm not, you have to read the documentation to see what it does. But it offers 3 different modes. In the first mode, you get the regular GOM thing. So, you create a zvol and you can partition it in FreeBSD and put a file system on it or whatever. The second one is block device only. So this prevents GOM from picking up the device. So that's great when you're doing iSCSI or any time you want to treat it as a raw device and not partition it on the FreeBSD system, but export it over iSCSI and have some other OS use it or whatever. And then the last mode is do nothing, which is great if if you're using replication and you have a backup system or something. You can say all these zvols, I don't even want them mounted. That way, there's not that speed lag and there's nothing to be probing them or writing to them or touching them or whatever. Yeah, so it sounds like what you want to do is set that vol mode so that you the way you would want for iSCSI, and that should that might be what's causing your problem. Although we need a better description of what the behavior is like when it's hung. Is the ZFS process in a certain state or what? You also mentioned trying 10 stable from a month ago, so that should be fine. I think there was one particular, I forget if it was a crash or something. Did that feature
go into 10 release? Or was
that was vol mode, I'm not sure. I don't think it was in release. You might have to have stable for it. But there was also a known issue with ZFS under really heavy load on 10 release or something. I forget. So you should probably try updating to even newer 10 stable and checking out that vol mode feature. We talked about it on BSD Now a couple months ago when it came out, but it's vfs.zfs.vol.mode is the CCTL, but it only takes effect after you, or it has to be set before you import the pool in order for it to take effect because of the way zvols are created at import time. You can find the SVN commit to get more instructions for it and stuff.
Cool.
I haven't got around to documenting that one right yet because I have to read more to learn about it to document it. But I will get that added to the ZFS handbook as well. So hopefully that will solve your problem because it sounds like you have a nice install there with 60 FreeBSD ZFS nodes with 80 to 500 zvols each.
Cool. Okay. Well, hopefully he answered his question. Hopefully that's what the problem was.
He says for most of the disk images, they're actually running over NFS and it's working fine, but they found that iSCSI is quite a bit faster and they'd rather do that, but they were having problems with it.
Okay, well, our last question then is from Sean asking about BSD switches. He said he started playing with BSD in a virtual box a couple years ago and tried deploying it at work for a few appliance-style machines that he administrates. The effort came up short when I kept running into compatibility issues with the BSD userland tools. He said, all my shell scripts are written in Bash and rely on GNU tools. The last problem I have yet to fix is re-implementing GNU's readlink-f, which will return the full canonical path for a given file. How would I do this in FreeBSD without installing GNU tools or rolling my own utility in Python or Go?
It's what's it called? There's a command for it. Real path.
Yeah, real path. Yeah, I'm gonna say that should be all you have to do.
Yeah,
I'm just looking to see if there's any flags. No, there's just real path and then -q for quiet mode, and that's it. It should basically do the same thing.
Yeah. Yes, because what? Hold on.
Oh, you're checking it with some links?
Yeah. Yeah, it works properly on Symlinks.
Yeah, it should.
Although readlink -f works as well on my machine, FreeBSD 9.3. So
yeah, it looks fine here too.
What's different about GNU readlink -f? Because readlink -f on a Symlink is working fine for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he doesn't say like what the error message is. Well, that would be something interesting to see. If you're seeing different errors or whatever, like how are you using it? What are you expecting to get? Send us that because I'm curious to see that too.
Or maybe looking at what version you're using. But yeah, readlink -f does work for us.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
But yeah, you should write your shell scripts in plain Bourne shell because then they work everywhere, not just Linux.
True.
Yeah, sometimes the tools can be a bit of a pain. Usually they're fairly compatible. You know, for obvious reasons, people try to keep the switches meaning the same thing, although there are a couple that get quite different.
But no, that shouldn't be one of them.
Yeah,
that
one's
work.
that one works for me anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, if you get some error, have some very specific usage you're doing that's failing, like, yeah, we'd like to know about it. Send it over. Be curious to see that. Cool. Okay. Well, that's the end of our feedback and questions for the week. So as we wrap up, of course, we want to mention that all our tutorials will be posted in their entirety at bsdnow.tv. Just a gentle reminder, go to the website, check them out, and including old tutorials, they're all up there. We want to give a special thanks this week to our viewer, Remy, for writing the basis of today's tutorial. So thank you, Remy. Also, send your questions, comments, show ideas, topics, or stories you want mentioned on the show to feedback@bsdnow.tv. That's the only address we monitor. Usually TJ, our producer, will monitor that. So if you get an email back from him, don't be surprised. You can also watch live Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern or 1800 UTC. So come see how we make the show. And of course, we mentioned this last week, but final reminder, OpenBSD is moving to a new distributor in September, which is, of course, just around the corner. So this really is your last chance to buy any of their current T-shirts, CDs, or posters, anything that you want out of that collection. Grab it now while you still can.
They only have the new ones at the new store.
Away. Yeah. And of course, this will help support the project, so it's a good thing to do anyway. But yeah,
it's a great way to donate and get cool stuff in return.
Definitely, and nothing's cooler than like OpenBSD stuff.
Yeah, they always have really cool posters and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I love the stickers for laptops and stuff. It's just great. But okay, well, cool. Well, we'll be back same time next week, and we look forward to having you guys here on BSD Now. Of course, your place to be, SD. The most common thing anyone has probably ever used BSD for, of course, is a web server. I know that's the first thing I played with it for, but of course, there's going to be a number of software and configuration choices you can use, but the tutorial today is going to focus on our current favorite, which is Nginx. If you're using FreeBSD or NetBSD, you can install it from ports, packages, or package source. If you're using OpenBSD, Nginx is conveniently part of the base system. So today we're going to be setting up a secure web server that only accepts HTTPS connections, encrypting all the data sent between the server to the client. Our config file will redirect HTTP requests to their HTTPS counterparts automagically. Very cool. First, we're going to choose strong SSL settings on our web server. We do this by disabling SSL compression to mitigate crime attack, and we disable SSL v3 and below because of vulnerabilities in the protocol, and we set up a strong cipher suite that enables perfect forward secrecy when possible. This way, we have a strong and future-proof configuration. This tutorial works with the stricter requirements of the SSL Labs test, which was announced on the 21st of January, 2014. You can find more at the topics below and in the links in the show notes, of course. But as we get started here, of course, if you're running FreeBSD, the config file we're going to be editing is located at user local etc nginx nginx.conf. It's recommended, of course, that you run this in a jail because that just makes sense. Yep. Security for free. If you're running OpenBSD, it's going to be in etc nginx nginx.conf and is run in a chroot by default. For our configuration, you're going to need to edit the parts between the server block for the server config. And at the end of the tutorial, you can find a complete example config that you can reference as you're setting this up. It may be a good idea to first back up the files before you edit them in case you make a mistake. Maybe this is your first time setting up a web server. So let's go ahead and have Alan discuss some of the potential attacks against poor SSL configurations before we actually get into the main part of the tutorial.
Before we start the tutorial, I'm going to describe a couple of the different attacks against SSL and TLS and the different effects they have. So the first one we talked about was the Beast attack and also the RC4 cipher. So in short, by tampering with an encryption algorithm's different cipher block chaining modes, portions of encrypted traffic may be able to be decrypted. Recent browser versions have enabled a client-side mitigation for this Beast attack. The recommendation at the time when this was discovered a couple of years ago was to disable all of the TLS 1.0 ciphers and only offer the RC4 cipher. And this was RC4 was also popular because it was a lower CPU overhead. However, RC4 has a growing list of attacks against it, many of which have crossed the line from being theoretical to actually being practical as computers get faster. Moreover, there's some reason to believe that certain other people, like the NSA, have broken the RC4 cipher, and therefore disabling RC4 started to become a thing. However, there are some ramifications to that. Users with older browsers such as Internet Explorer 6 on Windows XP will be using TripleDES. TripleDES is more secure than RC4, but is significantly more expensive CPU-wise, and your server will have to pay that cost. Also, the RC4 mitigates the Beast attack, so disabling RC4 makes TLS 1.0 users susceptible to the attack. By moving them to AES CBC, the usual server-side Beast fix is to prioritize RC4 above everything else. So the flaws with RC4 significantly outweigh the risks of the Beast attack. So especially with the client-side mitigations, which Chrome and Firefox both provide, Beast is not really an issue anymore. However, the risk from RC4 only grows as more cryptanalysis surface over time. So it's recommended that you disable RC4 and that the Beast attack is mostly mitigated by client-side fixes now. So any web servers that were configured to prioritize RC4 to defeat the Beast attack should now change that configuration. The next attack that we heard about was the crime attack, which affects SSL compression. Right, so the crime attack uses SSL compression to do magic. SSL compression is turned off by default in Nginx, starting with version 1.1.6, if OpenSSL 1.0 or newer was used, and Nginx 1.3 and 1.2 if older versions of OpenSSL are used. If you are using an earlier version of Nginx or OpenSSL and your OS is not backfitted this option, then you need to compile OpenSSL without zlib support in order to force it to be disabled. Specifically, it was using the deflate compression method, which is often used for compressing HTML and so on. The problem was that the decompression took away the compression made it possible for the attacker to, by using chosen plain text, to be able to decrypt parts of the messages. And if I remember the research correctly, they were able to steal somebody's PayPal cookie using it. SSL v2 is insecure, so we want to disable that entirely. Also, SSL v3 should be disabled in preference of TLS 1.0 and newer. because TLS 1.0 can suffer from a downgrade attack, which forces the user back to SSL v3, and therefore by disabling SSL v3, that'll keep the user on TLS 1.0 and prevent them from being a victim of the downgrade attack, which also disables forward secrecy. To explain that, perfect forward secrecy is certain encryption methods make it so that even if the private key of the server is compromised sometime in the future, it wouldn't allow them to go back and decrypt your traffic. Basically, the ephemeral keys that are used mean that even with the private key, you can't decrypt the traffic. And so that means that, for example, if the NSA or a malactor gets access to Google's SSL certificate, the private key, they can't decrypt old traffic. They can only decrypt all new traffic. And that's why perfect forward secrecy is a big thing. So to ensure the integrity of the session keys with perfect forward secrecy, you have to enforce the derivation of a new key for each and every session. This means that when the private key gets compromised, it can't be used to decrypt the older recorded SSL traffic. So we have to set certain cipher suites and so on to be prioritized. So the way SSL and TLS works, when the client and server connect, they each send a list of, the client sends a list of the ciphers it supports, and the server has a list of the ciphers it supports, and it goes down both lists until it finds the first match. So the order you specify the ciphers in, it determines the priority of which ones get tried first. So by prioritizing all of the perfect forward secrecy ciphers ahead of the ones that don't support that, means that if the client supports perfect forward secrecy, it'll be enabled. So this is done using Diffie-Hellman key exchange, which is how SSH works. The disadvantage is the overhead, which can be improved by using elliptic curve variants of those cipher suites. So in the tutorial, we have an example of a list of cipher suites that, for example, prioritizes elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman RSA AES 256 GCM with a SHA-384 hash. And then the same thing, but with the AES 128 and SHA 256, and so on, a list of ciphers, and specifically disables things like DES, MD5, RC4, PSK, no encryption, etc., etc. If you want to look at the reasoning and stuff behind the selection of the cipher suites and the ordering, we have a link at the bottom of the tutorial to Mozilla's blog about server-side TLS, where they explain the reasoning behind the different the ordering they picked, specifically, maintaining backwards compatibility with Windows XP and so on. And so, based on your choices, after you read that and understand why they chose the order they did, you can decide that your priorities are slightly different, and so you can decide to reorder them slightly. But anyway, so if we want to look at doing this, so if we first quickly install Nginx and go to the Nginx config directory and edit our nginx.conf, if we enable the SSL server, we can see that we can add the line SSL protocols, and we'll do TLS v1, TLS v1.1, and TLS v1.2, and this will disable SSL v2 and SSL v3. Then we see the default cipher suite is any high security cipher suites and not MD5. That's obviously not good enough. We don't want RC4 and a bunch of other things. So instead, we'll use this giant list that we just got from the tutorial, which prioritizes certain ciphers in a certain order, and then, only then, does it prefer the high, disable all types of no encryption, disable all the export safe encryption, which is the 56-bit DES stuff that used to be all you could export to foreign countries from the USA, and disable Camellia, all the plain DES, all MD5 hashing, and the RC4 stuff. And then finally, we'll say that we'll prefer the server cipher suites over the clients. So this provides some people. So it leaves some security for people using Windows XP by forcing them not to use RC4. If you want to use TLS 1.2, you need to have OpenSSL version 101C or later. Otherwise, only 1 and 1.1 will be an option for you. For the different key exchanges, we prefer all the ephemeral key exchange algorithms that provide perfect forward secrecy. So we prefer elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman, ECDHE, over the multiplicative version of just Diffie-Hellman as a former or less. So the first one, the elliptic curve one, is less processor intensive than regular Diffie-Hellman and provide similar security levels. So we support both because we want to be compatible with the client. For identity, we're only support RSA, and our certificate is most likely RSA. DSA certs are very uncommon, and so that's not likely to happen very often. For the message cipher, we favor AES over everything else. For AES, we favor the GCM mode over CBC mode, as GCM is more efficient and not susceptible to the beast attack. And obviously, we'll favor AES 256 over AES 128. For message digest, we favor SHA-2 with 256 or 384-bit digests. We'll disable the non-authenticated and non-encrypted suites, all of the legacy export stuff, the Camellia DES, MD5, and any pre-shared keys. So there are also some extra settings. For example, the SSL prefers server cipher suites. When choosing a cipher during the SSL v3 or TLS v1 handshake, normally the client's preference is used. So normally you have the list from the client and the list from the server, and it compares them and finds the highest priority one from each one. But if we enable this, the server will take its highest priority one, even if it's lower priority on the client, which will force the client to use the possibly more expensive one and save things. And finally, there's the stuff for the Diffie-Hellman ephemeral parameters. As of all versions of Nginx as of 1.4.4 rely on OpenSSL for the input parameters to Diffie-Hellman. Unfortunately, this means that ephemeral Diffie-Hellman keys will use OpenSSL's defaults, which include a 1024-bit key for the key exchange. Since we're using a 2048-bit certificate, DHA clients will use a weaker key exchange than non-ephemeral DH clients. So we need to generate a stronger DHE parameter. So if you're on OpenBSD, then we provide the command here on how to do that. On FreeBSD, you'll have to switch to a different directory and basically do the same thing. And then in your nginx.conf, you provide this SSL DH params file and tell it how to use your new higher strength Diffie-Hellman parameters. Finally, there's OCSP stapling as an enhancement to the standard online certificate status protocol that delivers responses from the server with the certificate, eliminating the need for the relying party, the web user, to check the OCSP's response directly from the issuing certificate authority. This has the effect of reducing bandwidth and improving perceived site performance, especially when a user's on a mobile device or other high latency connection. Having to make another connection out to the certificate authority in the middle of the handshake with the server and then verify the certificate that way takes longer. So instead, the server does the check with the certificate authority and caches the response and provides that stapled to the certificate when they send it to the user. And then that has an expiration date on it, and they can verify that with the public key of the certificate authority. And it avoids that extra round trip. It's also recommended that you enable HTTP strict transport security, which is basically an HTTP header that says this site will always have HTTPS, and then it provides the TTL for how long that's true for. And that way, if someone tries to do like an SSL downgrade attack and intercept the connection and force it to not be SSL, the web browser will know that, no, the site said they will always have SSL, so somebody's interfering with the connection, and let's deny that. So keys and certificates. If you want to generate your own certificate, which we'll do here, then that's fairly simple. So you can generate an RSA key. Oops. And we want it to be at least 2048-bit. They will not create, certificate authorities will not sign a certificate that's smaller than 2048 bits anymore. Then we can create a new certificate request, encrypted with that key. And then if we're into self-signing, then we can create our certificate bundle. So now, if we go back to our config file, it will look like this. So we have our server, we're listening on ports 80 and 443. We point at our SSL certificates. We have our cipher suites defined, our protocol enabled, our SSL stapling, our Diffie Hellman parameters. We've added our strict transport security header, defined our server stuff, created a redirect. So if the traffic is not over HTTPS, then we'll redirect with the original URL, but enabling SSL. And that gives us everything we need to have our secure web server. And then once that's done, we can just service Nginx start. Or sorry, sysrc Nginx enable equals yes. Then we can start it. And now you have Nginx. And once you're done, you can, there's a link at the bottom of the tutorial for the SSL Labs test. You give it the URL of your SSL server, and it will run a test on it and tell you if it meets all the requirements or what configuration options you might want to change. If you follow the tutorial correctly, you should get a grade A from the SSL Labs test. So, thank you for watching our tutorial, and we hope to see you again next week.